By now you've at least heard of Janna starting W instead of E, but Janna started E for years, and old habits die hard, so I know not everyone's a fan of the W start, so I wanted to explain why W is such a good ability for trading in lane. Hopefully after this you'll try it out and see how it feels, because I think it feels pretty good. So first of all, if you think about what makes a good trade, the idea is to do damage to the enemy bot lane without costing yourself as much. Obviously, to do that, you need damage, and Janus W has some decent damage on its own. Plus, it gets more damage from a bunch of random sources like Spell Thieves and Area, or even Comet if you're feeling extra ballsy, and Scorch and all that stuff, which adds up to some pretty decent poke. But you also need an advantage in range, so you don't take too much damage in return when you go to use it. And Janus W actually has a very nice range. It's like her auto attack range, which they gave a much longer range in her rework. Range is really important because if it was shorter, you couldn't use it on the enemy ADC without taking so much back that it usually wouldn't be worth it. But as it is, with its range, it often is worth it because they don't have enough range to hit you back. But to make that work, you need a move speed advantage so you can kite people and space properly. And all that means is you want to get in range to W them so you have a move speed advantage, and thankfully your W gives move speed. But the other half is after using it, being able to run away, after the trade, because if you're slower, then even if you're longer range, they can just close the gap and murder you. But even though Janus W loses the move speed after using it, the enemy she uses it on gets a pretty significant slow, which makes it hard for them to trade back. So Janus W gives range, move speed, and damage, all of which help for trades. And of course, there are certain scenarios where you don't need all three of those. Like, if you're Xerath and you can just queue people from super far away, or you can hit them like when they need to step up to CS or something. But in general, I think damage, range, and move speed are advantages that help trading well, and Janus W has all of them. And I also want to talk about what's realistic. So these are tied together in a different way, maybe, but it's just as important. I think having a low cooldown is important because whenever you use an ability, a cost is it's now on cooldown. So, for example, the cost of trading with Janus E is it has an 18-second cooldown level 1. So even if it expires in 5 seconds, it takes 13 seconds until you can go aggressive again. Whereas her W has an 8-second cooldown, so using it only means you can't use it again in the next 8 seconds, which means just like the W has a much lower cost in early trades than E. And this sort of brings me to synergy, because when it comes to being realistic, honestly, the best thing is to just play the game and see what feels good. But the second best thing is taking into context whatever else is happening. So, for example, if there was no reason you wanted to trade level 1 or no benefit to trading early, then E would be just as good as W despite its longer cooldown. But in the context of how landing actually works, being able to go aggressive and do damage at early levels is really valuable. So the fact that you can trade like twice as much if you take W first instead of E actually matters a lot. And even adding on to that, there's even more that W works well with, like everything that revolves around move speed for Janna, so her passive and like celerity, or even the fact that if you W somebody, you can often also get an auto attack in, or maybe that you used to have a wind speakers, which only made shield stronger, but now you have Airy, which you can poke with too, or even Comet, which is only for poke. And finally, just that it's easy to use, right? It's a targeted ability, so all you have to do is press W on the enemy champion, and Janna will do the rest. So, like, I don't think it matters how strong a champion theoretically is, like if they're played to a certain level, because what matters is how people actually play them. So, the fact that Janus W is really easy and reliable to execute is really important. So yeah, just give W a try. Again, all you have to do is press W on the enemy AD carry and walk away. I think it feels really good. Maybe auto attack too if they can't trade back. And you can trade with the enemy support too, but often it's better to trade with the ADC because they don't have as much ability to like CC you and damage you back. And if you poke the enemy ADC out of lane, it's really good. And maybe stuff like synergy changes from game to game. So maybe one game you don't feel like you want to trade or something, but in general, I'd really recommend starting W. And you don't even have to fully max it like first. Generally I just like to put a few points in it pre-six, depending on the lane, and then switch to max and E like normal. And if you do that, you get E max by level 9 or 10, which is pretty close to when you would have it maxed anyway. So, really, what this is all about is just why W is good for trading early.